Hey guys, this is Mohit from Indian iOS Guru and welcome to our first video on learning to build iOS apps with Swift. So, Swift is a new programming language developed by Apple and released last year at WWDC 2014. Swift is still under active development and as of Xcode version 6.2, Swift also got an update of Swift version 1.2. So today we will begin with learning some basics of Swift and we will be learning this with the help of a playground file. So to create a playground file, we first need to go and fire up Xcode, click on get started with a playground, give our playground file a name, and for platform, you could just leave it to whatever is set on your systems. Go ahead, click next. Choose a location where you would like to save it. I want to put it on my desktop and hit create. So you can see that we are importing UIKit, but since we only want to learn Swift, I don't think we're going to need this line. The next line you can see we have a variable called str that has a string called hello playground assigned to it. This area in the center here is the code editor and on the right hand side is your output area. So whatever you operations, calculations that you perform over here in the editor are immediately evaluated and the output is displayed in this sidebar. How this works is basically Swift has something called the REPL, R-E-P-L, which stands for read, evaluate, print and loop. So Swift in this playground file will read your code line by line, evaluate it line by line, print the output and loop back again from top. So you can see that this is defined as a variable with the string hello playground. Let me go ahead and change it. You can see the output immediately updates over here. Let's get rid of this line for now. And let's talk about constants and variables. So Swift has two important keywords that lets the compiler know whether a variable is supposed to be a constant or a variable. So the two keywords that help us do that are, we use the let keyword for a constant. So let's say let employee ID equal to 25. And you can see over here 25 is printed for us immediately. Let us say var high score equal to 2000 and you can see 2000 is printed for us. So let's try to change this employee ID equal to 26 and there we go. Cannot assign to let value employee ID. What this basically means is you cannot mutate the value of a let variable. Let's try to do this with the high score equal to high score plus 1. And there we go. High score gets updated. So we have the two keywords let and var for Swift to know what our intention is. Another thing you might notice here is that there's no data type defined. All we did was define whether our variable should be a constant or a var, take the name and assign a value. What Swift does is it has something called type inference. It checks the data type of the value that was assigned and infers the type of the variable. So now if I press the Alt key on my keyboard, you see my mouse cursor has turned into a question mark and click on it. You can see it has assigned the type int. Let's try to create a var and check the data type. So you can see the data type assigned has been string. Alright, so does this mean that data types are not necessary in Swift, or can we just not declare a variable with a data type. So yes, we can declare variables with data types, and to do that, let's say let name of type string equal to Rajnikant. Okay, and you can see we have no issues. So let's try it with a float. We can say let pi of type double equal to 3.14159. So I hope you've been observing this area on the right hand side where our output is printed for us immediately. Now to declare multiple variables in a single line, we can use the format, let's say var x, y, z, where all of them are of type double. And then I could say x equal to 20, y equal to 34, z equal to 45.6789. Okay. Now let's have a look at how we can print variables. So we use the print ln function to print information to our console. So let's say I want to print my employee ID. And here you can see println prints everything as a string. Let's say I want to print a hard coded message. And there we go. Now what if I want to print a string and a variable in one println call? So we can do that like this. The employee ID is, we use the backslash parenthesis syntax, and within the parenthesis we put in the variable that we want to print. And there you go, the employee ID is 25. So let's take a look at the comments available to us in Swift. We have the single line comment. This is a single line comment, and we also have, this is a multi-line comment. Okay, so let's talk about integers. So Swift provides signed and unsigned integers in 8, 16, 32 and 64-bit formats. The naming convention is similar to what we have seen in C. For example, let's say uint 8 corresponds to unsigned 8-bit integer. Let's try to create a variable. Let's say var some x of type u int 8. Let's try to assign a huge value. And there we go. Swift is complaining. Overflows, integer literal overflows when stored into u int 8. So let's try to put in a smaller value. And there we go. That's no problem. Okay. So we have uint 8, we have int 8, we have uint 32, we have int 32, and so on in the 8, 16, 32, and 64-bit forms. What we also have is the generic int type, which we use most of the times and is platform independent. So basically it works as a 32-bit integer on a 32-bit processor or a 64-bit integer on a 64-bit processor. So the data type is let some int of type int equal to 50. So int is the most generic data type that we would be using throughout the course. So let's talk about floating point numbers. In floating point numbers, we have two formats. We have double and float. We have double for 64-bit floating point numbers, and we use float for 32-bit floating point numbers. So let's just have a look on how to create some floats. So we can say var some double of type double is equal to 12 point something, and let us see, let some float of type float is equal to 3 point. Okay, so we are explicitly assigning the data types of double and float. What happens when type inference is used on a variable without explicitly giving the data type? So we can say var ASD is equal to 4.132. And when we inspect the data type of ASD, it defaults to double. So Swift by default uses the double data type. Let's look at how we can do some integer to floating point conversions and vice versa. So let's say we have let pi. Okay, we already have a variable called pi, and I want to convert the pi variable to an integer. So I could say int and pass in the pi variable. And you can see the decimal part is truncated, and what you get is just the number 3. Let's look at another example. We have, let's say, let decimal part of pi equal to 0.14159, and let's say let original pi equal to, let's say, double, take our int pi variable, which is just 3, and add the decimal part of pi to this. So this is how we can do some integer to floating conversions with Swift. Let's look at type aliases. So type aliases is similar to the type def what we use in C. And the syntax for a type alias is type alias, let's say custom int is equal to int. And now I could create a new variable of type custom int and assign it a value. So all we are doing is renaming the inbuilt data type of int to custom int. So let us have a look now at booleans. Let me shift the screen up for you. So Swift has a bool data type which accepts just two values, that is true or false. So let us say let earth is round equal to true, and let's say let roses are blue equal to false. And then we could do something like if earth is round, print ln earth is round. So you can see our if condition gets evaluated in line, and we have this condition, this statement being printed. If I go back and change this to false, you can see that nothing gets printed for me over here. Okay. So another topic that we would be covering in today's session is called tuples. So tuples are a way to group multiple values into a single compound structure. Let's see how that looks. For example, let's say circle is equal to 20, 30, 50. Now you might ask, what is the data type of this circle? So let us go and inspect. So the data type of this circle is a tuple of the form int, int, int. Let's try to create another tuple, and let's say let name is equal to Steve Jobs. Oops. Okay, looks like name is a reserved word in Swift. So we have name X equal to Steve, comma, Jobs. So the data type of this would be a tuple which is of the form string, comma, string. Okay, so tuples can be created with any combination of data types. So we could have an int float int, or float int int, or string bool int, string and float. Any kind of permutation and combination that you can think of is possible with a tuple. So a question that should be coming to your mind now is, how do we decompose a tuple so that we can extract the values out of it? So let's say let x, y, radius equal to circle. So we are creating another tuple. Do I have? All right. So I am creating another tuple and assigning the names x, y, and radius, and putting our circle tuple into this particular memory. And now when I say print ln, x is, let's say x, y is y, and radius is radius. There we go. So we have decomposed our circle tuple into the variables x, y, and radius. Tuples can also be in another form. Let's say let, or for this one we could say var new circle is equal to. Now in this form we are naming each tuple element at the time of declaration itself. So we would say x colon 20, y colon 30, and radius colon 50. And to decompose this tuple, we could use the form so new circle dot x, new circle dot y, and new circle dot radius. And we have decomposed this tuple. So this is the end of our first video, and the code for this video will be uploaded to GitHub, and the link will be available in the description of this video. And also head over, we will be providing the link to our website where you can come and have a Q&A session with me. Thank you.